Midnight Mass is the latest horror miniseries from Mike Flanagan, who was behind two other Netflix limited series, The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. When it comes to Mike Flanagan, I've had a mixed reception to his work. He directed a Stephen King adaptation, Gerald's Game, for Netflix, which I had a positive opinion of, so I went back and watched one of his earlier films, 2016's Hush, which I didn't care for at all. Hush was a slasher film made for $1 million, and I will say it did what it could with such a low budget. The whole film takes place in the house of a deaf writer as she fights for her life against a home invader.
Loved Riley. I loved Aaron. They were great characters.
Even though it was competently made, there just wasn't much original about this movie, and I really don't think Kate Siegel as a lead is all that good. In fact, in Haunting of Hill House, she was my least favorite character. Then I discovered she was Mike Flanagan's wife, and it all made sense. That's why she's in every piece of media he creates.
I'm so sorry. Please, just please.
I absolutely loved Midnight Mass, though. Hill House was based on a 1959 Shirley Jackson ghost story novel that has been adapted into two different films called The Haunting, one in 1963 and one in 1999. Bly Manor was based on Henry James' gothic ghost story novella, The Turning of the Screw, so this is the first Netflix show by Flanagan to be based on an original idea. I thought it was the best series he's done for Netflix so far. It all plays out like a classic Stephen King novel, but it's an original script from Mike Flanagan and his brother James. It has those same long take techniques that provide a wonderful sense of immersion, which Flanagan has used in previous projects. It's a very personal show to make for Flanagan, as religion, in particular Catholicism, is explored within the text. Flanagan was raised Catholic, though eventually became an atheist, and Midnight Mass is brimming with Catholic guilt. The titles of the episodes reference the books of the Bible, and the soundtrack contains a lot of hymnal choir music, as the town at the center of the show is a deeply religious one. The protagonist, Wall Street hotshot Riley Flynn, played by Zach Gilford, aka Friday Night Lights underdog sad boy Matt Sorensen, has moved away from the small town on Crockett Island where he grew up, but he is forced to move back after killing a young girl in a drunk driving accident. He spends 4 years in prison and returns to his home broken and cynical, devoid of any faith that might have been instilled in him from his upbringing.
I killed someone. God. But he just kind of let it happen, didn't he?
Before any horror sets in, there's plenty of time setting up the characters that inhabit this small town and the role that religion plays in their lives. Riley's devout parents are eager to bring him back into the fold. They're portrayed as good, honest people who look to religion for guidance and structure. Then there is Bev Keane, who is your lunatic religious zealot character who provides much antagonism. There is commentary on fanaticism and mob mentality, but it fits in comfortably with the subject matter of the story, being both critical and respectful of religious ideology and faith. There was a Vox article criticizing this show for not being hard enough on religion, but I strongly disagree with the argument the writer tries to make about how the show isn't even horror because it shows people finding comfort in religion, and apparently horror isn't allowed to do that. This just feels like gatekeeping to me. The cynical character of Riley seems to be a stand-in for Mike Flanagan himself, but in a smart decision, the show is really more centered around Father Paul, a deeply pious character who ultimately wants to help Riley. Stephen King stories are often critical of religious fanaticism. In Carrie, her overbearing mother Margaret locked her in the prayer closet because she was menstruating. So Midnight Mass does feel right at home with the stories of Stephen King. Even though the story does criticize blind faith to a certain extent, it also shows through characters like Riley's parents that religion can provide a spiritual structure that essentially makes them more compassionate people. There's a little environmentalist commentary in the beginning as an oil spill has hurt the fishing industry on Crockett Island, which casts an air of desperation over the setting of the show. The love interest is played by Flanagan's wife, Kate Siegel. Her character, Erin Green, we later find out ran away from home, lived a few wild years, was abused by her lover, and came home pregnant. She really doesn't look the part of the character whose life has supposedly been so hard. The Riley-Erin monologue scene on the couch, does get a little excessive. It just goes on too long. Riley is explaining why he is an atheist, and Erin is explaining why she has faith, which does deepen our understanding of the characters, but honestly, I found it a bit corny. This is my biggest criticism of the series. I will admit, I do like her acting here more than I have in previous projects. The real standout performance of the show is Hamish Linklater as Father Paul. He knocks it out of the park with the complexity of this role. He nails the cadence of an influential orator, and his character is one of the most conflicted in the show.
We tend to dislike mysteries. We feel uncomfortable not knowing.
Father Paul is the new priest who shows up to the island under mysterious circumstances. He quickly transforms the town by performing miracles and instills a religious fervor in the people who reside there. Again, it calls back to the works of Stephen King like Needful Things, Tommyknockers, and most directly, Salem's Lot, which was made into a TV miniseries by Tobe Hooper in 1979. It's such a tribute to this style of small-town psychological horror.
Ben Mears has been away too long. And now at last, he's come home to Salem's Lot. A town too good to be true.
The sheriff of the town, Hassan, is a Muslim man who is not entirely accepted by the Christian townspeople. He's trying to raise his son as a Muslim, but his son becomes intrigued with Christianity when he witnesses Father Paul perform a miracle. Then there's the town's doctor, Sarah, who takes care of her elderly mother with dementia. There's also the mayor, his wife, and their daughter, who is in a wheelchair. There are even more characters like Joe Colley, the town drunk, and the local drug dealer who goes by the name Bowl. So, you see, this could not have been done as a film. There are just too many characters that all need proper development. I feel in its 7-episode run, it builds up all of these characters appropriately, and it progressively turns more dire and apocalyptic. It's been out since September of last year, and it gets a strong recommendation from me. It's actually my favorite show of 2021, beating out Netflix's other high-quality show, Squid Game, because I liked the more definitive conclusion of Midnight Mass better. It's the kind of show that you should go into cold because it takes the first 3 episodes to set everything up, and then it all makes sense as to where it's going. Spoiler time, let's go. Midnight Mass is about vampires, yet they never use the word vampire. It's great. We've seen a lot of self-aware vampire media where everyone understands how vampires work. From Dusk Till Dawn, The Lost Boys, I love those movies. I love vampires, and I also love werewolves. Never seen Twilight though. In Midnight Mass, a vampire is mistaken to be an angel, so Christian ideology and vampire mythology are intertwined in order to critique religious fanaticism and even parallel the spread of disease and isolation, which is very timely subject matter given the never-ending pandemic that our lives have become. Early on, the town's priest is missing, and then a charismatic younger priest shows up out of nowhere. Everything clicks as soon as it's revealed that Paul is indeed the town's same elderly priest given back his youth through the transference of vampiric blood. The creature design on the Crypt Angel, aka the Vampire, is outstanding. Kudos to the production design and cinematography overall, just what a great looking show. It was a little weird at first that the character of Mildred, the aging woman with dementia, was obviously played by a younger actress in makeup, but when she becomes a vampire and gets younger, I understood why. At the end of episode 4, Riley is turned into a vampire. And at the end of episode 5, he sacrifices himself to protect those around him. There's a metaphor in the show with alcoholism and drug addiction being compared to the vampire's thirst for blood, as Riley is a recovering alcoholic whose drug use caused the death of an innocent woman, yet he cannot help but drink the blood from the chalice as though it were communion wine once the curse has taken hold. Riley's sudden death propels the series into a bloody conclusion that I thought had the appropriate amount of death and destruction. At the end of episode 6, everyone is locked in the church and turned into vampires, which we all saw coming, but it plays out with great tension and horrific violence. Then, episode 7 is the few remaining characters making their final stand to keep the vampiric disease from spreading to the mainland and the world. Sheriff Hassan is obviously one of the survivors because of his religious beliefs, but tragically his son doesn't make it because his son chooses to drink the Kool-Aid. The sheriff is forced to watch his son ceremoniously take his own life. Riley sacrificed himself to save Erin, so she's on the final team as well. The doctor Sarah and her mother Mildred are there too, though Mildred leaves the group to be with Father Paul because they once had a secret romantic relationship together. Then there are the two kids, Riley's younger brother and the girl in the wheelchair. This final team is so screwed. They have few tools to fight back with, and they're just learning the rules about vampires. The entire town is quickly converted or killed off for feeding, and the best that this group can hope is to sacrifice themselves to contain the spread of death. Erin dies cutting apart the Crypt Angel's wings so that it won't be able to make it into the darkness before sunrise. The sheriff prays one last time with his son and falls over dead. Sarah is shot by the village handyman and refuses to drink the blood that could bring her back. Bev Keane dies digging into the sand as she awaits the sunrise, deep inside knowing that she's been a terrible person all along and is desperately clawing at an escape from facing the afterlife. Father Paul thought it was a gift from God to be bestowed on a select chosen few. He knew Riley since he was a child and thought he was doing good by turning him vampiric. Remember, Father Paul thought of it as angelic, not demonic. Beverly Keane had come up with a plan to spread the vampiric disease to the whole world, but Paul realizes the error of his ways in the end, and he's the secret protagonist of the show, even though the character of Riley brings us into the world. The original vampire possibly gets away. He's been damaged in the sacrificial act by Erin, but he's seen flying off, maybe to find shelter from the sun somewhere else. Every character dies except Riley's younger brother, who has been overall a minor character. We watched him get high in the first episode, and I thought the show was going to take a Stranger Things direction. Thankfully, it didn't go in that direction, just because it's been done.
It's been done.
The other character being the mayor's daughter in the wheelchair. Then it just ends. I love the absolutely apocalyptic ending. Think of the way The Night of the Living Dead ended. Spoilers for Night of the Living Dead, I guess. Every character dies. I have no problem with that ending in a horror show that at one point had a montage scene where a middle-aged couple got their groove back through a combination of old-time religion and vampire blood. It's a great contrast from the initial highs the town experiences to the rock-bottom low of the ending. It all makes sense being framed in the beginning around a character who is a drug addict. As far as I'm concerned, Midnight Mass is a nearly flawless show. Mike Flanagan gets great performances from his cast with impressive long takes that incorporate precise staging, and he uses the horror genre to tell a deeply personal story. I'm going 9 out of 10 for Midnight Mass because I loved the experience of watching the show's story and action unfold, and it was a passion project from Mike Flanagan that he wanted to make for years. It really shows, and if you're like me and you've been reading Stephen King since you were a teenager, then you'll probably really enjoy this show too. You probably already have. It might have been overshadowed a little by Squid Game, but Mike Flanagan Netflix shows usually get a lot of attention. I just wanted to come in and do an official review to talk about how highly I thought of it.
It's great you're here today, but please keep coming back.